today's video, we're going to go through how to create Rivet's mechanical arm with EVA foam. If you haven't checked out the full makeup tutorial already, the link will be in the description box below. So now let's get into it. Let's get started with creating the fingertips for the mechanical arm. Here's a look at template shape I decided to go with. Trace the form on 2mm EVA foam. Add shallow cuts for the spots that need to be folded. Here you can see it folded and how it will look. Trace my hand with the fingers slightly parted. For the palm, cut a basic shape out of the same thickness and set aside. These are the shapes I created for the finger sections. Here you can see I'm figuring out the length and the width of the piece, along with the cutout placement for the top. Here's how the strips line up with the fingertip pieces and then the next finger section. Still putting shallow cuts where it needs to be folded and test it out on the fingers. There's a little extra length on these pieces, so there's place to trim. Since it's too large for the pinky, made a separate template. Go ahead and cut out the rest. Now to get those fingers made. Applied this all on a cheap cotton glove I got from Amazon. Glue some of the strips down on each finger. Figured it would be faster than cutting little pieces to go over each joint. Begin to hot glue the pieces on. When I was making the templates, I didn't account for the fit of the glove, so there's some trimming needed to get the effect. Some areas I chopped up the piece and angled the shape to fit better between the fingers. And then the thumb is the only place that just has a fingertip piece. Go ahead and apply the palm piece. Using template pieces for making spheres from Cosplay. 3 different sizes and cut them out at an angle so they'll sit better against the area. Glue down the curved pieces. Added the piece to the thumb. Cut some circles with a compass cutter. Made multiple sizes for the finger sides and knuckles. As you can see, these are the finger ones. Larger at the base and then smaller for the other two. The thumb is different with a stacked pair for the top of the thumb and then a smaller one for the bottom. The knuckle pieces are even larger stacks than the thumbs. Here's what we got so far. Added a strip to the base of the hand. On her arm it's actually a ball joint, but I wanted something that would give me better range of motion and I didn't want to complicate things. Use a metallic marker to lay out the details on the circle pieces, and carefully burn the details into the foam. The knuckles are outlines of the shape, while the ones on the side are just a single line burned into each. Use clay foam to fill in some of the seams. Smooth them down with a spatula and some water. Once all the seams are filled, set aside to dry and sand later. As for the shoulder piece, start by cutting 4 of the same size panels. Again, these are from Cosplay. Glue them down with barge, and broke a wood craft stick in half to apply the glue to the edges of the panels. After it's set a bit, line up the pieces. Once all 4 are applied, you will have a half sphere, and put that aside. For the recessed part of the shoulder, cut out a strip wider than what you'll need from the inside. You can see where I marked the space to attach. Burn in the grooves. Mark the inside for the cut. You can see the original line, then made an inner line, and that's going to be the actual cut line. Left a small part attached to the back to help it keep its shape of the dome, and should look something like this. Lightly Dremel the edges and clean them up. Also smooth the joints of the dome some. Went ahead and measured the length and width of the piece to go into the bottom and marked the center of the cutout. Hot glued the panel into the inside of the dome. Back to that lower piece. Mark the center and create the wide opening. Go ahead and cut out the opening and line up the 2 center marks. Glue it in and there you go. Use some foam clay to seam and round the transition from the lower panel to the dome. Once dry, sand smooth. You can see the sanded versus the unsanded. Also sanded the glove seams. Made a set of stacked circles for the side of the shoulders. Went ahead and burned in the details before I glued it onto the shoulder piece because it would be easier. Attach it with some hot glue. And now for the forearm piece. Start with the piece that I could slip my arm into. Cut a basic shape of the 2 panels on the arm. This is out of the 6mm EVA foam. Went ahead and heat shaped one of them. Just heat the foam with the heat gun and carefully press the round end into the back of the bowl. Hot glue the 2 pieces and cut strips of 10mm EVA foam, creating a ring. Dremel the outer edge to give it more of a rounded taper. Sketched out the center detail and roughed out where the holes were going to go. foam clay to fill the seams between the ring and the arm piece, and burn ridges into the inner part of the arm, and add the lines. Carved out the center detail and put in the holes. For the upper arm, again created a piece that I could slip my arm into as a base. Now to create the lower portion. Make 2 overlapping strips out of 6mm foam. When I had the piece on, I used a marker to see about where it would go. As you can see, there's little excess below it. So I did end up trimming that later. Burn a single line along the lower strip for the end detail. Using the 6mm EVA foam again, cut out the shape and check the fit. I put the piece on again and marked the position where these parts would be. Put some barge on the small strip and press it into position on the wider strip. Then lift it up and you've created a stamp. You know where you need to put the barge. And adhere them in position on the main upper arm piece. Glue the smaller pieces down and then cut out the piece of the strip in the middle of the shape. Foam clay the seam and add a small ball at the front of the shape and carefully push it down and add a hole to the center. Then put a triangular piece in the center. This will represent the large mechanism that you can see from under the shoulder piece. And that's the arm pieces. Heat sealed the foam, sprayed it yellow with Rust-Oleum. Mix some gray acrylic with Wicked Silver to give the metallic some opacity. Paint the joints. Took a couple coats to build it up and even out the color. Since this was spray painted, the gloves attached also got coated in the yellow. To give the illusion of a more robotic hand, you're going to want to carefully go in there and paint the exposed portions. I used Createx Wicked in black. See on the right, it gives a better effect, so it's best to take that extra time. Painting the black around the knuckles using the Createx. To finish off the joints, I added a coat of Createx Silver to give it more of a sheen. See how translucent this color can be. For the piece, I wanted it to be much different than the lower piece. So I just went in and added multiple layers. For the forearm piece, use a darker yellow acrylic for the ring. Also a side note, I did create the small piece for the elbow, but that just wasn't filmed. Again, doing the gray and silver mix for the inner arm seam and the inner part of the ring. Skipped ahead and added that silver gray color to the recessed piece in the shoulder and the section of the upper arm piece. This way I can shift more into the fun part of painting. For the texture effect, this is still a mixture of the gray and silver, only the mixture is more silver to gray than before. This makes it more translucent, so as you layer it, it gives it more of an organic, interesting look. Lightly raking around the edges, you're going to want to keep in mind where it would naturally get scraped and wear out. Using Wicked Black and add some small hole details around the thumb. While I had the black out, painted in the ridges on the shoulders. Brush on some silver onto each section to make it more metallic. And use the pure silver to add the strip around the opening. Again, since this is translucent, it took a couple coats. I used a flat brush that is the width of what I wanted the stripe to be. That way it will be easier to keep it even all the way around. Carefully painted the inner edge black to give it more depth. Do the same distressing paint mixture on this piece. You can also pat the area with your finger to soften it. Put some more silver around the opening to get rid of any yellow coming through and set it aside. Grab the forearm piece and paint black into the areas we burned. Use a baby cotton swab for the holes. Since it was about the same size, it was a lot cleaner and faster to paint them in this way. Then start to distress it. Since I'm on a roll, grab the upper arm piece and added texture to that too. Now in the photos, this seemed to be the most worn out piece on Rivet's arm. Took time to build up multiple layers and added very light passes of the paint over the edges too. It gives it more of a grungier look. Took the airbrush and the Createx black and sprayed some dimension in the recessed parts of the shoulder, also along the smooth ends of the grooves. Gave the inner ring some shading on the forearm and in the inner gray section. This will help make it look like it's sitting further back into the arm, and also airbrushed around the rings. Use the dark yellow to clean up some of the overspray on the rings itself, but not too concerned with fully covering them up. Realized I didn't darken the line on the upper arm, so threw some black in there. Added black along the triangle shape. Some silver detail on the edge of the centerpiece, and airbrushed some soft shading onto the gray area, where it meets the yellow portion and the very top where the shoulder is going to sit over. Added even more worn paint effects. This is pure silver, keeping it thick and in specific areas to get a little bit of an extra metallic sheen. The pure silver works great for really soft, subtler textures too. Add some sheen to the inner parts of the ring. And over all the pieces with a thin amount of the silver as a last touch. Add some dimension to the silver areas of the glove. Again, creating more dimension between the pieces. Putting it right up against where the strip meets the yellow pieces will make it look less like it's just sitting on top of the strip. Add some more distressing, because why not? Also added the color to the circles that are coming down the fingers. Did end up adding thin black lines down the silver strips of the fingers, like so. So now all your pieces are detailed. I used this craft mesh tubing for the hose to attach the upper and lower arm, since it had some really good stretch. Just hot glue it into place, and there's that. Be sure to keep an eye out for the final video for this series on how to create Rivet's hammer, and I'll see you next time.